Audio's on. I could do the countdown.
Yes.
Oh.
So we're all set?
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome to the Tuesday, April 22nd, 2005 Eidelweiss Board of Commissioners meeting. It's 9 a.m. and we're going to have a little adjustment to the agenda. We're going to deal with two manifests. Are we going to approve minutes?
Yeah,
Yeah, we said we'd approve minutes,
Okay.
the manifest, and then go right into water.
correct.
So we'll approve the minutes of first, April 11th, 2025. So I make a motion that we discuss and approve the minutes of
I don't know if we need that.
April 11th, 2025.
Second.
Discussion?
I didn't have anything on
No.
that one.
All in favor of approving the minutes
Aye.
of the 11th, say aye.
Aye.
3-0 on the 11th. Now
Okay.
we'll approve the minutes of the 15th. Discussion on that? Make a motion to discuss and approve those minutes?
Second.
Any
Uh,
discussion?
Yeah, I have a few minutes.
I had one, and that was under the sixth bullet, under the DPW report.
Mm-hmm.
It says that the income will be posted to the unassigned fund balance.
Oh,
And
yes.
it just gets posted as income.
Okay. Listed as income. Okay, great.
And that was the only one I had.
Okay, I got a couple. On the very top, it says the meeting was held on Wednesday, April 15th. It's actually Tuesday.
Oh, I
April
forgot to
15th.
change it.
Okay.
Oh.
And yeah, one of those things. One of those
Great,
things.
thank you.
Then, to the DPW, on the second page, aware that the Commissioner's report, Mark Graff, bullet, just created in there, but concrete is spelled wrong. Okay. That's all.
Yes.
Okay.
For approving those minutes, those adjustments?
Aye.
Aye. 3-0. Now we'll approve an operation manifest of the operations is $15.
50 seconds.
Make a motion to discuss and approve that manifest.
Second.
Aye, yeah.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
3-0 on approving that.
Okay.
Water manifest for 11 and 447.34. I'll make a motion to discuss and approve that manifest.
Second.
Discussion on that manifest. All in favor of approving manifest, say aye. 3-0 on that manifest. For 11,447.44. Now, we're going to switch the rest of the agenda and we're going to discuss engineering projects with next schedule.
Morning.
So focus on Patty Beach and we're seeing trends in the uranium industry, not in the direction that anybody would want. We're for that. Since we saw us, we went through gathering more information. We got down to a little more detail on preparing for a problem that should happen in the natural life cycles of the PWA, that existing well in A, and needing Muddy Beach to get back up. It would take to change. In the relation that putting a second DPW gravel back municipal well, we're calling B in, is going to take a long time than anybody wants to get all permitting and engineering. And we have shown with the two hydrogeologists and a water engineer at the state. Week and a half ago now.
We could go this past Friday,
Yeah.
the 11th. The 11th.
And they liked our plans, and we wanted to go over those with you.
Okay.
So we told them that we now think that it's the right move for Eidelweiss to invest in a treatment system, uranium at Muddy Beach. And we know Muddy Beach has multiple problems and an unknown tank. And we still think that we need to invest in the treatment for that, for the reasons that we need it to be available should the DWA pump go down. We need a source of while it could take up to 7 days to put a new pump at the DWA. So that's, we got an email follow-up from Michael at the state that I sent, which was really great, I thought. It was suggested we talk to people in the Conway area that have a system. It's interesting, I thought that he did mention Rockhouse Mountain, and we were told that they have uranium filtration, so maybe we'll ask them for contact with them. And I guess we didn't discuss whether we would actually talk to the person that Unger gave us the contact and telephone number, whether we want to do a conference call with them or maybe go see the people at Rock House if that's possible. We went ahead and got a quote, and I've been waiting to tell the concrete floor contractor to go ahead and put in a concrete pad and leave open areas underneath where there's piping in that room. There's 3 places that we won't put a concrete pad, concrete floor under, where it comes into the building, where it goes into the tank, where it comes out of the tank and goes near the door out to the system. So I'll let you fill in anything that I didn't give as the intro of what we've done since the last time we saw Nick in regards to Muddy Beach. I'll get right into questions about things you need to answer for the public, because one of the things that we did was talk to them about, you can interrupt me at any point too,
Okay.
I don't want to do all the talking here. We said that we would notify the public if we got into a situation where we didn't get the uranium filtration system, treatment system in place, and DPWA went down, and we had to use Muddy Beach as the only source. They confirmed for us again that we're allowed to use that water, even though it's been hitting over the max of uranium content per unit of water. We agree with that. We want to notify the public we're using a well that we haven't used since November 26th. Even though it's acceptable for us to use it, we want to contact those people. And think that that's no easy feat,
Well,
because we don't know when that pump is going to go down, and therefore we don't have a lot of time to notify the public that we're putting that well back into service.
It's probably unlikely you'll be able to technically notify them before it gets turned on. I think you're going to have to be, it's going to be a notification that
Potential.
the pump failed last Friday and we switched over, or there's a notification that says, like, at any point we may need to, this is the situation, if there's a failure at DPW well, the plan is to switch over to Muddy Beach and run from that source. If that happens, we will notify you as soon as possible, but getting the notification out before a drop of water comes out of Muddy Beach is, I don't think, realistic. Unless there's,
Well,
you have everybody's phone number.
this is a good conversation, because by no later than May 8th, since we got dings for being, out of spec, we have to send out a public notification. It's a standard bullet form. We've already done it twice in the last year.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same form, except where there's a little, they give you 2 lines to say, and what are you doing to remediate the problem? we're gonna say, see opposite side of page, and I'm working on a description of our plan.
Yeah.
Of putting a uranium mitigation equipment into Muddy Beach.
I mean,
And I
not
can
even
add exactly what you're
not
saying.
operating the well unless you absolutely need it. I mean, I think your plan is to not necessarily use it until you've got it treated, but you can never know if DPW goes down before that happens, then
Correct.
you gotta do what you gotta do to make sure that the people have water, and I think the commissioner's decision is to continue to supply water to everybody, even though you know you happen to have uranium in your course. It's legally allowed to be, distributed to the customer. You think that's the most, the right thing to do? I mean, it's typically it's a long-term exposure is what you're worried about. So for short periods of time, it's probably not be the end of the world. People need to know, obviously.
So your point is, in the notification that's going out,
In the
they'll
next
hear
couple
for the
weeks.
first time, there could be a situation that we don't have a treatment system installed.
Right.
DPWA goes down, and the water operator has to shut that off, and while he's taking the pump out of DPWA, we have to use Muddy Beach. We can also say that we will let you know as soon as possible, and that won't be through a mailing, because that's too slow. We'll use social media, and
Post it.
we'll post it
Put it on
in the
the
village.
website.
Yep.
On the website,
Maybe
announce
you
it
could-
at our meetings
You
here.
could take more regular samples of what the actual levels are during the time at which you're using that water, right? Because I thought I saw that it's fairly inexpensive for the state lab to
Yes, that was
run
good to
testing.
know, is that they were saying it's $15
Yeah,
to
so
send a
maybe
sample to the state.
if you end up turning it on to use it, I mean, I don't know if you guys agreed to sample it more frequently, I think that was the recommendation, is to get a better baseline of what you need for treatment, because that will help with sizing for design of removal. But if you, if you're sampling it monthly, say, during the process of we're doing the design, but if you actually have to put the thing online, you're gonna sample it weekly or something, I don't know. I mean, the other thing I was thinking about, and not to get off topic, but like, if we're sampling it on a monthly basis to get an idea of like needs for treatment, how much are we actually using the well in order to like simulate what the, will it vary with use versus just time, like it seems like it's varying, but is that based on wasting some water out of it to kind of flush it, or like see if you're pulling water from further distances, or?
Well, Ian has started a pump test, and he's pumping water to ground,
Yeah, okay.
not into the system. And I saw that it was running for at least a couple of days.
Yeah.
It's still, the hose he has a fixture in the front of the building now that he puts a 2-inch fire hose on.
Yep.
Runs it to the woods behind the building.
But it goes through the meter before then, so that we know how much he's pumping, obviously.
Yes.
And he's measuring the water level in the well itself.
He put it on the output of the meter right before it goes
Yep.
down into the system.
Yeah.
And now there's a big ball valve shut off, so that no water can actually leave that building into the water system itself.
I mean, if it's maybe if we're really thinking it's only a 7-day period that it goes on during the pump replacement at DPW, then the enhanced sampling isn't going to mean much, because you're not having
7
enough
days.
time to do it. But
And also, for the long term, even if DPW A is fine and we get B installed, the Muddy Beach will just be a backup. It wouldn't be a regular part of supplying water to the
Right.
system. It's an emergency backup.
yeah.
So,
True. And I don't know enough about that's the other thing is, we'd have to work with a vendor in terms of the treatment people and how that, how long does that material last? And they're gonna tell you, it depends on how much you're using it. It depends on what the concentration is of uranium that's coming out of the water. And we deal with this with other things that we're treating for. It's like, if the concentration that we're selling is varying, it's hard for them to give us a life of their material because they're saying, well, it's always varying. It's give us an average and we'll calculate the life based on that average. But some of it will have to do with use too.
Unger was saying in his follow-up email that we sent you, kind of setting our expectation is that you don't have to deal with the waste as frequently as
Yeah.
we might have thought we had to. I don't know if you caught that out, what he was saying.
Yes.
Yeah, I did. But also, we heard from Ian that he made it sound like, oh yeah, I've done this before. I can get you guys set up. Let's just go forward. But then in talking with Unger and his crew, they were the ones that said, well, we're going to be much more comfortable if there's an engineering design. Did I hear that right? And
Yeah, they require it.
right. So
At least a high-level summary of what,
So, yeah.
What's
Yeah, I
going
think
in
what
from
they
you?
want is like a basis of design report kind of thing that says like, we're designing it for this flow rate, we're designing it at this concentration, we're providing this much media volume for the treatment based on, recommendations from the vendor on sizing. I don't know, there's not a whole lot of space in that area, but there's some open floor space that I think we can probably, it'll depend on what the sizing is on the vessels, and if we're using it as a backup source, maybe it's usually related to flow rate of the well more so than the volume of water that's going through it, right? So it has to be able to treat at a flow rate as it's passing through the media, and then the life of that media will be based on for how long it's been running at that flow rate.
so it
The well test will be important. So from the well test to know like what exactly is our rate going to be coming out of that well for treatment, and then we'll size, we'd size the vessels for that treatment rate, and then it's just a matter of like, okay, how many spares do you have like in order to last, But if it's a backup, I think you could almost like he was suggesting, you just pull out the vessel, the whole vessel gets taken out, and you plug in a new one. So even the switchover, not a long downtime. It's like, I assume it's just like a day thing where one vessel comes out, one vessel comes doing the plumbing to set it up. There's some time to like flush it and fluff the media to get it like prepped for treatment. But since it's a backup source, it's probably pretty easy to deal with.
and he was even suggesting that we specify smaller vessels
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah.
for wholesale trade out of vessel, not the guts of the vessel on site,
Yeah.
is what I was interpreting.
I
what
wonder,
he
like
said.
the other question we may have for them do we need to have parallel treatment trains where like a lot of times you have like, redundancy with your treatment, so that if one is getting replaced, the other one is getting, treatment through it. But as a backup source, I'm not sure if that's going to be required. I don't know if it's required for this type of treatment, because a lot of times I did notice he talked about blending it too, where you may not be treating the entire flow rate out of the well, you may be treating a portion of it and then blending it back to meet your requirement.
So we'd be blending treated well source with
Basically,
untreated well
right,
source.
you're trying to dilute the uranium level by treating some of it and putting the treated back in with the untreated to get it to dilute to below the level at which.
that would require constant monitoring.
And we're imagining that we're only running this for a 7-day period every 7 years.
Right.
Wishful thinking.
On a good day.
I think we need to
Except,
find out
except if
from
the Muddy
the vendor
Beach,
may tell us too, like, hey, you need to make sure you run this at least this amount. So,
Right.
like,
Time to, yeah.
so we should
find that
we
out.
should find that out. I think you know, the first steps in terms of like saving money on the engineering is, like you suggested, talking to some of these other operators that operate these systems, trying to get an idea of like, you know, if you do some of the work of, you know, they use this vendor or this treatment system, they use this treatment system, these guys like theirs better than these guys, you can kind of point me in the direction of this is the vendor we want to work with to do the design, then it helps me with, you know, working directly with that vendor to come up with what are we putting in our basis of design report to satisfy DES.
Are you imagining the water is treated as it comes out of the well pumps,
Yes.
its way into the tank for the first
Correct.
time?
Yep.
The storage tank?
Because that'll be a less of a rate. So the rate at which it comes out of the storage tank into distribution is a lot higher than what it comes out of the well into the tank. Typically.
Because the test, without talking to Ian, what I saw happening is he was pumping the water out of the tank, which has been sitting there since November, using the
Booster pump.
VFD pumps that put it into the system out of the tank,
Yeah.
not the ones at the bottom of the well that put the water into the tank. So the test he's doing now is on the system pumps, not the well pumps.
Hmm.
Now, he may just be emptying the tank so that he can
So
do
that
it.
they can run pump.
Yes,
I mean,
and he's not putting any of it into the system.
yeah.
So I'm pulling off the concrete guy. I have to call him and say, we approved this, the road ban has been lifted, but I need to hear from Ian.
Right.
He doesn't need to access the room anymore that his testing is done, or else he's waiting for concrete to turn the pumps on and off. So, and I put a third email to City Water to get him to tell me anything. But now I know you're gonna be treating the water as the well pumps into the storage tank.
Typically happens, yeah. But
So,
we
You
don't,
wanna know the specs on the well pumps today,
Yeah.
and therefore I'm guessing that Ian's not done. He may have emptied the storage tank and can tell us what the system pumps are doing
Yeah.
today.
I think we know one of the well pumps, because Hartley put it in like than 10 years ago.
Yes,
Yes, less than 2.
Yeah,
We
it was just replaced.
We had both.
a year ago.
Oh, maybe that was a different one than what I was
No,
involved
we paid
in.
$9,000 last year.
Yes.
To replace one of the pumps at Muddy Beach.
Just one?
It was just one.
Last year?
Yeah.
One's like 6 or 7 years
Yeah.
ago
Yes.
at least. The one I remember, and I don't know if it was 1 or 2, but I remember Hartley being involved in us, you know, helping spec the pump.
And Hartley did
Oh,
the
that was
latest
the one.
change, and it was 9,000.
So,
Which I thought at the time was, after we started seeing the uranium problem rise,
They
with
were-
bad timing, we wouldn't have changed the pump. Now, with more data coming in since November 26th, we now see that we are better off maintaining Muddy Beach as a source for the long term, no matter what. And I wondered whether we had to cycle the filtration system to keep it healthy. But I think the state would let us do that out to the ground,
sure.
because we're not flushing the filtration system out, we're just running it. So what we're putting out to the ground is actually treated water, just to exercise it, not put it into the system. And we still have other
There's
problems.
no disinfection there, right? There's no chlorine added.
There's no need for any treatment there. We don't adjust
There's
pH, we
zero.
don't chlorinate,
Yeah.
or anything
Yeah.
there. Now we're gonna treat for the first time uranium.
Mm.
So one of the questions we had for them was, can we backwash the filtration system out to ground? And you saw that
I said no.
they don't like that idea. They said if we had a municipal sewer system, that we could do it, but we
They
don't.
said that they allow it for certain leach fields, but I wonder if the concentration is too high. Volume is too high that they wouldn't allow.
I thought of that too, is could we build a leach field, custom leach field just for this, and dilute it going into the leach field with treated water? Even water coming from the municipal system, or the water coming out of the treatment
Yeah.
system. But,
I mean, we've definitely done that with other backwashes, just like a typical softener backwash. We've had systems that we've had to build an infiltration trench. I mean, it's a septic system, more or less, but
hard to think of, because part of this is, we don't wanna use it,
yeah.
so we're not gonna be producing that much waste. So it's not worth the investment in a leach field and doing all this. There's moving pieces to this.
Yep.
Questions? So we should narrow down the vendor by talking to people.
We need
We
to
should
talk to
con-
at least two different, we know Rock House has one, and then Mike Unger gave us one,
Yep,
was it Conway or?
Davis Hill in Conway.
Conway. But also Ian made it sound like he knew what sort of equipment and vendors as well, so we gotta get his input.
Then after we have narrowed down the vendor, we need to talk to the vendor about exercising the equipment. If our strategy is to keep it shut off long periods of time, which it is right now, based on what we know, and in the state agreed that that's a good way to do it. Would like to know what the vendor says we should do as far as turning it on every once in a while to make sure, and testing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, typically once you know who you're gonna work with as for a vendor, you're gonna be able to provide them with, your raw water sampling information, your levels of uranium that need to be treated, and then they should be able to help size the equipment and tell you how long it's gonna last based on a certain average daily flow rate. Our average daily flow rate's gonna be very small, where 0 is kind of and then see what's the minimum we can run it to keep everything fresh and working. It talked about fluffing that resin. That was one of the things I don't understand exactly what that.
Good, because I didn't get it.
I don't. Yeah, I mean,
I don't even know what this looks like.
I get a better idea of what that means. Does that, not using it, does that impact the resin? And do they it'll depend on how the system's set up. Do they sit full of water all the time?
Yeah,
If you're
it
not
gets
using it,
filled up and you know when it's
you keep
full.
that building heated anyway. You would have to keep it heated. Keep it.
Well, we do, so.
Yeah.
When you say exercising the system, assuming we got it's scrubbing the uranium, filtrating it out, whatever you want to call it, doing all that properly, why wouldn't you put it into our water system if only for 1 day every month?
Because it produces waste. I'm trying to keep the expense of the waste to a minimum. And I think the public would really rather hear that we're not using a filtered uranium system when we have DPW1 producing stuff that doesn't need treatment at all.
But by exercising it, you're still going to produce waste. But when you say exercise, you're envisioning a couple-hour test?
Right, and finding out, yes, something that is, let me say, once a month for an hour
An hour.
versus it's on all the time.
And the outflow would just go back to ground?
Yep,
Okay.
and it's treated.
And it's treated? Okay.
Yeah,
Going
that's
to ground.
interesting.
All right, so that's the key question, is they're gonna, what do the vendors say, how often should you be running the system to make sure
Yeah.
it all
And I mean,
works properly?
yeah, if it's easy to set up and run it to ground, then just run it to ground.
Yeah.
But I think to Woodling, if you've got treated water and you need to find a place to put it, you could put it into the distribution system and fill the tank.
Yeah, just to make sure that side of the system is working correctly.
There
to
shouldn't be
feed-
any, I mean, there's not much more that you'd be checking on other than maybe the pipe from the pump house to Eidelweiss Drive or something, but I don't know. I think it's just it probably doesn't matter either way. It'll
And-
depend on how much I think the vendor will tell you how much volume you gotta put through it and whether it's worth it to waste it or, you know. The other thing is, what is the level that it may not, the system may be designed not to treat to zero, it may be treating it to whatever meets the MCL.
Yeah.
So then to Mark's point, it's kind of like, well, you're still putting uranium into the system, even if it's treated, it's still got some in it.
Didn't Michael say that we should be shooting for zero?
Actually, but then he was talking about,
Right,
To dilute it.
yeah.
Yeah.
another
We'll
thing,
probably need to get better feedback from them too on like the goal, I guess, is zero, but it's gonna be a cost associated with getting it to zero, and there's gonna be a cost associated with getting it to meet the whatever
Required.
that- Yeah, whatever that is.
Well, didn't we already prove that our system, we took a test up to the summit, that we did our own test, and the uranium did not exceed the limit,
Yeah.
and that included water from Muddy Beach, if I recall.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, you kind of have blended it, right? Obviously,
Yes.
you blended it. Unfortunately, you don't blend it until it gets up to that tank, so you can't, that is like a blended source or anything.
Yeah, it's not gonna be.
Because
consistent.
anybody, right, any customer between Muddy Beach and the tank technically could have pulled different concentration of water at different times.
I'm radioactive central there.
So yeah, I think getting some idea on what people's experiences are with different vendors. I mean, I haven't done one of these recently. I've got people who have done them in Vermont, so we can get feedback from them on who they've used for vendors. I think Ian will have some good information for us. And then if you can, from there, I think I know what DES wants in terms of basis of design and probably schematic drawings. And then I guess we'll have to figure out how you guys want it, how do we want the drawings to, what are we producing for drawings? Is it like a full bid set, or is it just like something to get approved and then working with we know we're gonna work with this vendor and it's more schematic based than showing every single plumbing fitting and bidding it so that you apples to apples, I guess, when you get pricing.
Well, they did say a high design,
Yeah,
so that
I
would
think at
tell
least
me
at the
that they're not getting that far.
yeah,
And if we have a chosen vendor, if we've talked to a couple of vendors, then we might be able to just sort of get an idea of numbers between the two vendors and make our own choice.
yeah.
And of course, it will depend on what the cost is as to whether or not we actually have to bid it. But I don't think there's that many people that do this,
I don't think so either.
so.
And PFAS, like we're doing a lot of stuff with PFAS stuff, treatment.
Yeah,
And we find that we're working with the same people on everything.
Yeah,
wow.
I mean, you gotta get through the first part in terms of like getting approval through DES, and then we can decide what's best for the district in terms of getting a kind of like drawings, design and then bid and then build, or more like a design build where we know who we're going to be working with. I think something like this, it might be more economical to try and work with the vendor at the beginning.
Well, we're always concerned with the cost of it and economics, but also the urgency of it, because we informed that the current pump at DPWA is what, right at about 7 years now? And so, you know, Ian is sort of like hinting that we need to change that out pretty soon. So I guess obviously we'd love to have the uranium thing in place before we have to actually do that. So I have no idea how long a project like that, it sounded originally like this was not really a very project to do. Now I'm beginning to think it's a good bit bigger than I initially thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff to consider, but I don't think it's necessarily a big project. Once we know all the components, we know if we have a good idea of what the that we're treating. You know, these vendors theoretically do this all the time. They'll be the best resource in telling us, like, this is how big the project is. I mean, I can't tell you that, really. They're the ones who have, you know, boots on the ground doing these specifically. And again, I think talking to the operators that operate them, I think we're going to get a good feel for that.
Yeah, see what's involved.
So we need to talk to a couple of end users and then get the results of that back to Nick so that he can start to
Right.
talk to the vendor that we get from talking to end users. And we'll write an email to Unger and the hydrogeologist saying we had this meeting today. Here's what resulted as a little more detailed plan of how we're going to get the first design to them.
Yeah. And I should have a floor plan I can use from Muddy Beach that we've got from the last time we did something there. So, I mean, we can use that to do some kind of, you know, ultimately we'll have to put some kind of layout plan together to show DES this is the treatment vessel in the building that's there now.
So the last time we talked to Ian, he surprised me by how little of the floor space he said he would need. We would have to figure on put the treatment system in. And he said more of a pad than doing the whole floor. So when I got there with the concrete engineer, I saw where the pipes been from the well, from the ground, over in the left corner where the humidifier is on the wall. Ian said if we had to move the humidifier, he would, but I don't think so because I told the contractor, box that off, leave that open to ground because those are where the pipes are if we ever had to dig them. Then in front of the tank, there's the old section of concrete wall that comes out. So I said box it off to this sharp edge of a concrete wall that sticks out. Then come across, leave it open in front of the tanks where the water pipes come out of the bottom of the tank. And then the third open area is near the door, just to the right of the door, where the metered water goes into the system from the output pumps. So there'll be 3 open ground areas of this odd-shaped pad, giving us as much concrete as the piping system allowed us to have. And then Ian said, when I told him this, he said, well, you could do the whole floor. I was like, that's the way I left it with the concrete guy. And I asked him if he put polypropylene.
I mean,
fiber into the
Yeah.
concrete. He says that he does that on all floors.
Yeah.
So we'll get the maximum out of concrete.
Right. I mean, any of our new piping would be above ground. It's not gonna have to penetrate the floor theoretically. If you leave the penetrations that are there that come in from the well and out to the distribution, that should kind of cover us. Everything else will be piped, above the new floor to the treatment tanks and back to, from the well to the treatment tanks and then into the storage tank. I mean, the other thing is, what are we doing with that storage tank?
That's, we're going to eventually cut a hatch into it and see what the inside of it is.
Yeah.
We hear folklore has that because it's suspected of being an ocean buoy that the original developer bought secondhand, that it has baffles in it to keep it from swishing around in the ocean too much.
Yeah.
But we need to get inside, we need to do the metal testing on blisters and then take blisters off and do that. I learned about that years ago, after anyway. And then there's also the problem, the communication system with SCADA is not reliable.
Yeah.
And seasonally, it doesn't work at all. And it's just the opposite of what you would think leaves on the trees are doing to interfere with radio waves. It's in the wintertime that it doesn't work. And some interested parties believe that it was hemlock trees that were blocking the signal coming from antennas and we should cut those down. But the SCADA company itself doesn't think that that's the problem. I suspect that the problem is that it's shooting across the pond. And the way the pond changes from summer to winter changes what happens to that ground hugging radio waves. Other than that, I don't see any physics.
I mean, that's, and communications is important, but if it's still being operated as a backup system for short periods of time, you can live with that kind of.
Well, we can operate it manually
Yeah.
Right.
for the 7 days.
Yeah.
That's why
Right.
I'm not worried about that part.
Right.
But the
Right.
tank is
The tank is
critical as part of how the system works.
right. And for the 7 days, we don't have any evidence that it's leaking now. After we get the filtration system in and it can pump, we'll operate it even if it leaks, because it won't be a gushing leak. But we do have to make it, the next priority is to cut a hatch and get in there and see what this tank looks like.
Sure.
And possibly have a project that we put a new tank in. But we need the filtration system first. And the idea is that it's just a 7-day. Now, the cases that we would have to use it would be that we lost 3-phase power on Route 113, which we would need even if we had 2 DPW wells, A and B. You lose 3-phase power, it doesn't matter that you have a second well. And the other thing is, if the well field was contaminated, meaning you can't use A or B, then we need Muddy Beach. So those, as far as I see, those are the 2 biggest things, that we lost 3-phase power in a storm that took a pole down. And that's kind of shorter lived. I told the state that when DPWA was put in, New Hampshire DOT, I contacted them and said, they opened up a drainage area. And I said, we just put a municipal well where you are trying to drain something from the highway. You should be doing the opposite. And the engineer at that time, I believe is Mark Miller, came out and designed this catch basin system. He's protecting the well field, and he put a culvert underneath the driveway that goes into DPW facility, and built a 14 by 50 foot levee, earth-walled, open-air catch basin. So whatever got spilt on 113 and tried to make it into the well field gets captured, sent through the culvert under the driveway, and is stored away from even the building. You can picture where I'm talking about. If you're on the driveway, it's to the left. So they said, the Unger and company said, have the stake back and look at that. You know, I said this, you know, it's all grown in and stuff, and they said, yeah, they probably want to do a little maintenance on that. It'd be a good time for them to come out and inspect that, so we have to put that on a list of things to do.
Yeah.
So it's contamination of that well field would be the only reason we had to really start using Muddy Beach. And even then, it can't produce the way DPWA does.
No, it's not gonna function as a true backup in terms of meeting your demand. It's a hold you over.
Hopefully. Would have to be
Yeah.
conserving, getting people to conserve if we were in a
I think so.
situation like that.
Yeah.
Which used to be the old days, we used to put signs up all over the village before we had DPWA, is that we didn't have enough water. That would be not so good. All your questions answered? Got a good picture?
Okay, so in terms of moving forward, we three need to, basically contact Rockhouse and Conway, anyone else we want to. Hear what they have to say about their systems. We'll be having Ian in hopefully too.
First of the month,
Um,
2 weeks.
Guess that's the first step. What's the second step?
I'll put together,
Get that information to
To
Nick
Nick,
and he
yep.
can start
Yeah.
to do a design.
I'll put together a proposal that's, I'll call it kind of like basis of design proposal. And then, you know, if we need, it'll be what I think is necessary to get DES approval. But not necessarily, it's not, probably not gonna be like final design bid documents type of thing.
Yeah.
We'll see, we'll determine how we wanna move forward once we're through that first phase.
If we're all set on Muddy Beach, I'll move to Bergdorf.
Okay,
Yeah,
So at 9:47, we went from Muddy Beach to Bergdorf. So the only pipe that feeds the Grissom Road area, the Bergdorf area, Granville, Constance Place, and a handful of houses on 113 are all fed through the water main that goes through the Grissom Culvert area, which the road is closed, as you know, and we are trying to come up with a temporary way of protecting that pipe from yet a third storm that wants to wipe that road out again. We have seen the winter melt and the rainstorms we had in April bring the water level up to where it's actually flowing out of the overflow pipe. The bottom pipe seems to be slow, but does move water. The water does go down. It's down now.
Not a clear blockage at least at the head wall. There wasn't debris that came down and
Well-
blocked the head wall. We think the blockage is inside the pipes.
Yes. I wouldn't see that there's debris from coming down.
Yeah.
We did watch debris come down on the top of the 14-foot high water going into the top pipe, and it was trying to send a 1-inch diameter sapling
Yeah.
that fell out of a tree or fell off a branch, but it looked like a sapling that was washed off the mountain somewhere. So it is trying to clog the top one. So culverts want to clog, which is why the element solution is something
That's why
that's
it's a
got a
big
huge
opening.
opening that can pass a tree.
Exactly.
So we're thinking about trying to protect the pipe by putting a swale to where it washes out, which is away from the concrete structure and the two-pipe system. But right where it's washed out twice and taken the water main with it as 8 feet of fill and washed it into downstream, lining it with a geotextile and weighting it down box, the lowest cost way in temporary, if we get another storm of 4 inches
Like
of
an
water,
emergency spillway to get it.
continue to supply water.
Yeah.
We asked Ian for an estimate of what he would charge to get 2 isolation valves, as we've discussed before, so that we can shut that pipe off. And what we really want to do is have a second way of bringing water into that whole area through Bergdorf. The horizon maps, which cost $40,000. The first time I needed to go and look at them to see where the water main comes down off Aspen to the very first house that, and only house that it supplies water to, number 2 Bergdorf. Those $40,000 maps don't show a water main at all coming off Aspen going to this house. Jennifer looked up a few months ago where that house is on the water system and they pay a water bill. So I believe that there's a water main there.
Any record of a curb stop?
Next thing. We
It
go
wasn't obvious when I walked through the area.
to look to see if we can find the curb stop. It's got underground power utilities to this house. We looked to see the house was maybe constructed in 2005 from the tax record of when the house was built. We don't see a curb stop on either side of the driveway or in the driveway. So if it's there, it's buried. We go and look at the curb stop.
Tie book.
Yes,
No record of that building.
we don't have one there.
Bummer.
So we need to find the wand and go out and find Kettle
Wow.
and locate where this curb is, believing that there's one there.
Mhm.
Then we go and look at the other end of the pipe where they ran a new water main down to get to a Habitat of Humanity house that was built a few years ago, maybe 5. We didn't look for the curb stop card for that, I don't think.
I didn't know.
We couldn't see any trace of a curb stop on the ground. The horizon maps say that a 4-inch water main was connected to where the 2-inch water main stopped at the previous last house in that main. It was run several hundred feet down to bring water to this Habitat of Humanity at their cost of running the water main. It says they put in a 4-inch pipe. We don't believe that. You seem to remember that there was a discussion about how it was supposed to be a 4-inch pipe, but they only put a 2-inch pipe in. They continued it as a 2-inch pipe down. So, we're not sure what we're connecting to down at that end, but that's just a matter of the adapters, knowing where it is. We know that there's a water pipe down there
Yeah.
to that. So it's a short distance from number 2 to the other side of the culvert, and the culvert's the key part, is to where the Habitat of Humanity house is. I'm not sure what number that is, but it's a low number, odd number.
Yes.
It's on the other side of the road. Getting it under the culvert is gonna be a tricky.
Or over the culvert, I guess. I mean, how deep is that culvert?
Not deep enough.
yeah.
No, way not deep enough. It's probably got 2 feet of road cover on it.
Yeah.
We'd have to elevate the road but,
Well, I'm trying to go under the culvert, if it's in bad shape, it's not gonna be.
it's a new culvert. It's a high-density
Oh,
black
it is?
plastic, yeah.
Okay.
And it was reset in place after the last storm. It got damaged as Grissom let go and washed the road out, took the water main with it. It all came down and damaged the Bergdorf culvert. So they resituated that, rebuilt the head wall, and the DPW is pretty confident of that installation. they wonder how we're gonna get under the pipe.
Mm.
Now, we did the project of bringing the force main from the DPW well 6,800 feet from the DPW to Jungfrau. We went under the biggest culvert in Eidelweiss, which is the output of the cascade that comes out of Little P and wants to go across Route 113 and goes through our wetlands. There's a 8-foot culvert. It's a big metal culvert.
Yeah.
It was installed in the 60s when Eidelweiss was built. So Richard Heath and Son went under that. The state specified that we had to switch from Blue Brute 6-inch main to cast iron going under that culvert. Heath didn't like that, didn't think that it was gonna be a good connection. But after he did it, he said, I'm surprised, the Blue Brute fit tight into the cast. So what we're talking about for Bergdorf is a 4-inch fused. We're gonna make it that anytime we do water main work now, we're gonna use 4-inch fused pipe, no more 2-inch Blue Brute anywhere. So even if it's in the middle of an existing 2-inch Blue Brute or old 2-inch
Yeah.
plastic pipe of lesser design,
Irrigation.
yes, we're gonna use 4-inch fused. So that's setting your head up to design, put a spec on how it goes under the pipe. And I think you should consider that spec says they put rigid insulation over the top of the pipe as it goes under the culvert, where the culvert's gonna bring cold air down through there. Little guarantee, if that's possible, if that makes sense to you. And I think we'll have isolation valves where it starts at number 2
Yeah.
and at the
Yeah.
other end.
I mean, I wonder if we could directionally drill it where we don't have to excavate out any of that portion. We can drill it. You wouldn't be able to get the insulation in there, but you could. I mean,
Spray
the other
it.
thing is you could drill a sleeve. We could drill something like, but that's going to be a lot more expensive to do something larger diameter. Yeah, I mean, there's some options, I think. Okay. I mean, I think it would be a directional drill with like a 8-inch sleeve, and then you could insulate between the sleeve and a 4-inch carrier pipe. We may not really have to worry about freezing. Depends on how, I wonder how big diameter is the culvert pipe, and whether we can get, yeah.
I don't know if it's 48 inch, 36 or 48. One pipe.
I'll drive by there,
I thought we might go
yeah,
after
yeah,
today.
I'd like to. I've got a good picture of, I know exactly where you're talking about. What did we think it was gonna be, like 200 to 200 feet of pipe, maybe? 300 feet, something like that?
I don't think it's 3.
Yeah, okay.
It's a short walk.
And this would be kind of like schematic type like design where we're not gonna have survey of the existing conditions. We'll show schematically what the existing conditions are. Some kind of clear, we'll have to try and quantify how deep that existing culvert is if we wanna get pricing from a contractor to,
Yeah, we want a spec that has not a fully surveyed drawing, but a drawing, but basically the AWWA specs with the metal tape and how
Yeah.
deep and how to bed it.
trench section to show what the trench is gonna look like. I guess the question is like, how much of a profile can we show them along the route to show like, I mean, we need to show some profile to say like, how are we getting underneath that culvert? And, I mean, if it's directional drill, it's kind of like, the profile's pretty simple. You're gonna dig a pit on this side, you're gonna dig a pit on this side, and you're gonna push a pipe underneath it. And we'll wanna know roughly how far below the surface that culvert is to get underneath.
Which you'll see this afternoon,
Yeah.
or
We should be able to take a couple
the end of the
measurements.
morning, yeah.
Okay.
So ideally, we would like to do this project this summer. It would make me not worry about a rainstorm
Taking out Grissom.
taking out the whole Grissom area. Did I miss anything on that?
No, and
Nancy was out Easter morning looking not for Easter eggs, for curb stops.
looking for curb stops
Oh,
and culverts
geez,
and.
Way more fun.
You don't have one of those metal detectors?
We do.
We do, we do, we didn't have it with
Oh,
us.
okay.
We're waiting for our next holiday to go out to do that. So we will find those curb stops, and I guess we'll produce the cards that we don't
the cards
have, where
that we
they,
don't
where
have.
they are.
Okay,
I mean, we're gonna have to, we'll have to, you know, we'll show on our, whatever we come up with the drawing, we'll have to show some understanding of where we think the connection's gonna be in terms of a length. You know, you're going from this point to this point and it's this many feet. And you're gonna have to dig a test pit to verify that that's where, you know, you're gonna have to find, like, the contractor's gonna ultimately have to find that pipe. Even if we know where the curb stop is, we're not gonna know where it ties into the main.
Well, they could
Right.
they could follow the service line from the curb stop to find the main,
Yeah,
right? So they're gonna find it. We don't know what they're gonna find.
hopefully they can, yeah, I mean, are they gonna have to dig to find that, or can they?
I think
Yeah,
they might have to.
they might.
They're gonna have to dig crosswise across the road to find it with or without the curb stop as the reference,
I
right?
think so. I mean, the curb stop will get them closer.
Yes.
Yes.
I still think there's tests and exploratory excavations.
I wondered whether we did that prior to the contractor doing it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the equipment to do it, I think that might be.
Well, if Ian rolls out and does the isolation valves on Grissom with his mini excavator, the mini excavator would probably be useful instead of bringing a full size out, which the contractor will do to put the pipe in.
Right.
The mini excavator might be a better tool to go down and find it, and then the contract will be
Yeah,
better bid with that knowledge.
yeah, I mean, it'd be good to find it on both sides, I mean, and to know for sure that we have a 2-inch that we're connecting to and not a 4-inch.
That's, yes. So
I
we'll
mean,
consider
it
that.
should be pretty straightforward parts, right? So even if, like, you know, you're losing a little bit of time if, like, theoretically, if the contractor that's doing the work is test pitting it, he finds it, he doesn't have to backfill it and dig it up again, he could go get the parts he needs and connect on and start running pipe, but
So if we had Ian find the ends of these pipes, that would be a good time for him to actually put
put the valve on.
the valve on and the
Maybe.
adapter for a 4-inch.
I think so, probably.
That would lower the cost of the contract putting the rest of the pipe in under the
Yeah,
culvert, you would think.
I mean, having the valves would be a pretty big deal, because then you have a way to shut off the water when you're gonna connect to it.
Yes.
Right.
And keep the service running for
Yeah.
those two houses.
Yeah,
So just so I understand, the isolation valves are gonna go on either side of the water main,
No,
no?
where the first house is here,
Yep.
number 2,
Right,
where that water main ends, we dig down to find it so we know where it is, how deep it is, And while the hole is open, we put, for example, Ian can put a shut-off valve there, an isolation valve there, and the adapter to the 4-inch pipe that another contractor will win the bid to put it all the way down to the other house. And the house where the Habitat of Humanity is on the other side of the culvert. Ian digs down, finds that pipe, determines whether it really is a 2-inch pipe or a 4-inch pipe, puts the isolation valve on it and the adapter at that end. Now the company wins the bid to put the 4-inch fuse between the 2 isolation valves. They're waiting for them.
Okay.
Maybe we backfill with sand to make the digging easy for them to get back down there.
Yeah. Yeah, typically they would put like, and you could put like a 2x4 there so that you're gonna
No way to dig.
yeah.
That we were just talking about before is there's a dead end main on this side of Bergdorf, but we want to connect it to the main that's on Aspen.
No, we want to connect it at the house, the first house on Bergdorf, number 2.
Go up as far as that. Okay.
I mean, the big part of that project is getting under the culvert.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's the,
Right.
and that's why I think you have Ian do the valves on either end, and then you bid and get a specialty contractor that's gonna deal with how we get it across the culvert.
Ian has told us he's not interested in putting that water main in, because I assume it's because he knows he has to have a bigger machine to do that.
Yeah.
And that's,
Well, and if you're, I mean,
you know,
if you try and do an open cut, you're gonna have to deal with the water, the runoff going through that culvert, because at some point you're probably gonna have to dismantle that and go across it and then put it back together. Or unless we can get under it with enough, I mean, I don't really wanna tunnel under it with,
that's what they did on
yeah,
Gretchen.
I guess depends on how much,
In 1993.
yeah.
But the
I'll need to
idea,
get some advice on that,
drilling's,
how we do that. But
I was amazed by a drilling job that a restaurant up on Route 16 did to go under Route 16 and connect to the sewer system in Conway from Albany. The underground drilling was a huge distance and not in a straight line.
yeah. Well, they do it with like gas pipe a lot too, you know, where it doesn't have to follow a per profile because it's under pressure. Same with the water. We don't, as long as we don't, you know, as long as we get enough separation from the culvert, we don't care if it wiggles a little bit as it goes, you know. And the state I mean, there's enough requirements by the state to drill under their highway. We should be able to find a contractor that could do a drill under, you know, tunnel under this.
The contractor that drilled on the Route 16 for this restaurant was just outside the store here a half hour ago.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So we can talk to him for sure.
yes.
Okay.
Enough on Bergdorf?
Yep.
The Como PRV project is dropping down in priority on our growing list of engineering projects.
It's a shuffle.
Yep.
Where's that design these days? What does it need?
I don't think it really needs anything.
Because your last drawing was pretty good.
Yeah, the one thing I think you mentioned and I didn't really respond to was I moved the drain. And I didn't like the idea of not having a drain that was, I didn't want to rely on just a sump pump and a non-automatic sump pump where we were relying on somebody to go and pump the thing out.
Yeah.
I thought having a drain to daylight was important, so I think we can daylight it across the street there in terms of elevation wise. I don't know about you know, the easements and legal requirements that may be involved. I think I showed it ending before the edge of
Boundary
right
line?
of way.
I think you did.
I think he's right, yeah.
And then when we put the water main from the PRV to the intersection with Hotwell, we're gonna run a second line to daylight there. I think was the plan.
Yeah,
So we'll have three things. We'll have the sump pump in it that's manually operated when the water operator goes in there. And then we'll have these two drains out of the bottom to daylight.
yeah.
And we'll see how the drain works the first one, as to whether we need the second one.
Kind of, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the first one would do it. But if you weren't gonna do that 4-inch down to Hotwell, then we need to have it go across the street there. And the other thing I thought about was trying to push the PRV pit up and around the corner on
St. Moritz?
St. Moritz, but I think we want to, I think because it comes around and, you know, the water main goes back up St. Moritz, right? The St. Moritz kind of climbs when it goes around the corner.
Yes, it does a J back up to Oak Ridge.
So that dead ends back there, I think. The water main that comes down St. Moritz, it J's up to that and dead ends. So I didn't know, like, I didn't really want to move the PRV beyond that intersection because I think, I don't know. I didn't want to change the system too much and move the
Yeah.
PRV. That would be a kind of a bigger change than
Because
what we talked about.
a project that's in the master plan from 2005 is to run 2,500 feet of 4-inch main from Oak Ridge Road down St. Moritz. And now to the new PRV, they'll be sitting there waiting for it.
Yeah.
I think that's the way we should stick to.
Yeah.
Yeah? Picturing this?
PRV, yeah, but a new water main coming down St. Moritz, doesn't exist now,
No?
but is gonna be put in anticipating future needs of that area. Okay.
And that was gonna be based on the data that we can give to Nick once he's got the PRV, giving him the data of how that whole area behaves.
Right, as to whether or not
Peak
it's something
demand
that
and-
would be higher priority to get that from Oak to St. Moritz.
Does it come off the same zone on Oak when St. Moritz goes up and around? Is it beyond the Oak station?
It's below the Oak
It's
Station.
still on both sides, where it would loop on both sides.
No. On the other side, it's Como. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
What do you mean loop on both sides?
So, I guess I'm thinking, if like, say this is Oak, and this is St. Moritz, and this is Como. Like this loop, like you're talking about almost like this would loop all the way back to Oak? Cause it dead ends here now, right?
it dead ends there, and then you have Basil to Chicorowa View, and Chicorowa View is at the top of the,
Chicorowa
Chicorowa
is like up
Station.
here,
so that end comes from
But
Chicorowa.
yeah, but Oak Station is somewhere in here, isn't it?
It's down towards the other end of St. Moritz, so it's pretty close to,
It's above the intersection of that pipe at
Down here.
St. Moritz and Oak Ridge Road.
Yeah,
The,
so like this part of St. Moritz is on Rhinoc zone,
right,
and then this part of Chicorowa View is on
Chicora
Chicorowa
Station.
Station.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But technically like the same as the back side of the Oak Station, I guess. I mean, theoretically, they're the same.
The uphill side,
The uphill side.
yes.
So looping this, you can't really loop this without another PRV to, because this pressure up here is higher than this pressure over here.
Right. And just to complicate it a little bit, you remember that from the Upper Lakeview PRV, there's a pipe that runs
Yeah,
down
it comes down
below the
right
intersection
to
of,
here, right?
I think it actually runs down below the intersection of
Chicora View.
where the Chicora View Station is, runs lower on
Yeah.
top, yeah.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yep. Which is one of the reasons we split that PRV.
To control the pressure down there.
Yep.
So we covered Muddy Beach, we covered Bergdorf, Grisson,
Como PRV.
Como PRV. If we're done with that, we can talk about Nancy also trying to find Lee Carroll's original design for a generator hookup at Jungfrau.
I don't know, did he, so I talked to Lee and got a proposal from him for a generator, a standby generator. But I didn't put it into my proposal because I started looking at the civil components of how do we actually, where would we actually put a generator there, and like, how does it fit with, and I think I asked a question about the boundary, and then you reminded me that it's, all of that station kind of fits within the bridle path.
20
right
feet
of
wide.
way.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think we're, I don't know, I still think we're, it's gonna be tough to figure out where exactly can we fit a generator on that site. And I haven't figured that out exactly, if it's like, do we have to build a wall on the downhill side of the slope and build up a wall and sit it on top of a pad on top of a wall? I think that's,
And ideally, it's not over the 6-inch water main that's coming up
Yeah.
from.
because then I thought maybe you could cut into the other side of the, put it on the opposite side of the road and cut into that side, but that's where the water main is going up Bridle Path, so you can't really cut into that opposite side of the road and try and like fit it in there, because I think you'd cut into where your cover over the water line. Unless we can sit beside it somehow.
In
And
either
I don't know
ca-
what's better, like,
Mm.
like, to me, I think on cutting one in, you might have a smaller wall, like, but, then you're dealing with running all the, I mean, that road has got a lot of stuff going on in it too, right? Because there's a PRV pit in there somewhere that I don't really know, nobody knows, right?
That was a secret project, there were no
No
drawings done,
original.
it was done
Yeah.
in the
okay.
darkness of night.
So I don't know, like, do you think Lee did a design previously for it? Is that what you're thinking, or?
Yeah, there was a proposal
do a
that was
trans- he did a
done many
transfer
years
switch.
ago for all the water stations,
Wow.
for putting generators.
Standby, yeah.
So I went looking for it, that the draw where I thought it was, has been rearranged. So now I need to probably check boxes.
Ugh.
Yeah,
To see if we can find it, but yeah, I remember there was a
yeah,
whole,
I think Lee said he had done work, there was electrical upgrades in that station 10 years ago, maybe? Between 10 and 15 years ago, I think.
would be about right.
That's when the Wonk 3-phase converter was taken out, the
Yes.
VFD pumps were put in.
Yeah, so there were some electrical upgrades he had, when I first asked him about getting us a proposal, he was, like, yeah, let me see what I can find for my existing information, and he couldn't find any of it. And then, I think after looking for a little longer, he was able to find some of that. I think that was gonna help with his design, but yeah, he didn't seem to think he had done anything there in terms of standby generators.
No.
I wondered if there was like a transfer switch put in, like where like at least you could have like a portable generator?
I don't think so, because Ian had a rented generator for a problem a few years ago and
Right,
cut
so
a
there
hole
is
through
some,
the building.
yeah,
He cut a hole into the building, so there was
Yeah.
nothing on the outside to hook up onto.
Okay.
right, but there is now, or he put the hole, so.
An
There's a
access-
hole.
So there's an access hole.
But there's not a transfer switch.
The duct tape transfer switch.
Right. So, I mean, I've got half the proposal, but I don't have I think is sizing a generator based on the
Yeah.
load, and I think the hard part is where the heck do we put this thing?
The electrical work was done prior to the force main being put in from Jungfrau. The pumps were already in there when we put the force main to Rhinebeck, and that force main project was in 2012. So any electrical work to change the WANC converter out of there and put the VFD pumps in happened prior to 2012, to give you an idea. So when you said 10 to 15, probably 15.
Yeah.
15?
I thought Paul and I were working together at that time. I remember.
Yep.
And didn't start there till 2012. 2011. No, 2011.
So you think you were
I think it was
working
right
with
around,
Paul?
I think it was right around.
Right
there.
around that time
I think
frame.
It was like one of the first, like in, when you first start, you get thrown a lot of stuff, so
Mhm. So maybe it was 2011 that was changed,
I
because
think it was
2012,
dang close.
he was using the specs of the pumps as they were just installed to figure out how the water was going to go through the force main up to Rhinebeck.
It may have been some closeout stuff too, that I remember. And not necessarily the design. I know I wasn't involved in really any of the design stuff, so part of me thinks it was like some closeout stuff and that Lee was involved in. But I remember like one of the first times Paul and I came up here together was meeting Lee over at that station and kind of going through like a punch list or something. So.
No.
But anyway.
I will still
it's-
continue to see if I can find it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess, I think in order to do the civil site plan work, we're gonna need to do some survey work over there and get topo in order to design a wall and figure out where this thing can fit and make sure we're still on the bridle path property and not leaking over to a neighbor's or something like that too, so. It's a bigger project than I think I may have initially led on. But I guess my thought was today, trying to get a feel, just visit the site and come to an agreement of this is what we think will work in terms of locating it here, and then that will allow me to figure out what's involved in engineering, so I can finish the scope and get it to you in terms of a proposal.
I'm thinking there's a house next to the Jungfrau pump station. I'm thinking they would not enjoy a big
I don't think so either.
diesel generator. It would be probably propane, but I wonder if it's not three-phase power going to those VFDs. Would a battery system, is battery technology come along enough that it could go inside the building on the top floor? We have plenty of space in that little room.
Yeah, I don't know.
That would solve the surveying and placing this on a 20-foot wide path where there's a water main somewhere underneath it.
It may be worth at least, yeah, I think you should ask the question.
For Lee.
And we can look at
He
it
should.
just
he
to get an idea.
Yeah, he should be able to answer some questions based on the information he has now.
That would save a lot of money in construction and design.
Mm.
Yeah.
it doesn't have to run for very long. Well,
You don't know
I
that.
guess the ice storm of '98 makes me take that back.
Yeah, so normally it would be a short time, but it could be up to a couple of days.
A couple of weeks.
Jeez.
Yeah, in worst case scenario, like that ice storm.
The trees keep falling down for days. Okay. We'll ask Lee what he thinks about that.
I've never seen it, so
Nah.
I feel like if it was a viable option, we would have seen it somewhere. But battery technology has come a long way in terms
There's some houses in Eidelweiss that have
Yeah.
them mounted on the outside of the
Tesla,
houses
I mean,
now.
what are they, the power walls or whatever they call them,
And then another solution is a mobile generator. It's on a trailer, and we bring it there and set it up out in the driveway out in front for when we need it. We already have the hole in the wall, so.
Just need a transfer switch.
Right.
Sounds like that's all we need to put in.
And we were supposed to get a transfer switch at Rhinebeck, and that didn't happen in that project. Another
Yeah.
mysterious thing.
yeah. Portable one may make a lot of sense.
Yeah. From a cost point of view, it's just.
I'm like, I mean, I think that's a tough site. It's a very tough site.
Yep.
I mean, we gotta put, I mean, it would have to be, you gotta find enough room for a generator and a propane tank.
Yeah.
There's already a
And then
propane
you-
tank.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
All the stations are run by
Oh, yeah,
propane.
right. You're
So
right.
there's already a tank there.
Is there a buried, is it a buried tank or is it above ground?
I think it's above.
I've not seen.
Yeah. Well, I guess the other thing is there enough propane to run a generator too? And then I've heard with like propane, usually you have to oversize the fuel size so that it can get the vaporization. Like during cold, it needs a certain volume to vaporize the propane so that it can be used. But anyway, you need some space to get an above ground generator somewhere there, and whether, you know, even if you use the existing fuel source, we need certain separation requirements from things. I don't know if it can fit in a 20-foot wide.
I like the mobile generator.
Yeah, because we've talked about this before, is that Jungfrau isn't the only place we could use a mobile generator. The DPW could use it in several different situations at different places. When the garage doesn't have power, which they had. We had a
Right.
guy go home and get his own generator to come back and get the garage doors open when we had a power failure there, when they tried to get the trucks out for a storm. So,
I mean, the generator at, I guess, I mean, you can have a power outage at Jungfrau and not have a power outage at DPW, right?
Mhm.
But I mean, a widespread power outage for the system, I mean, a generator at Jungfrau does you nothing if you can't get water to Jungfrau.
right. But they also were able to rent a mobile generator. So if we had one and we need another one, depending upon how big the storm is, we
Yeah.
could probably get one.
Yeah. Getting three might be tougher.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
everybody wants them.
Yeah.
You inhaled.
Well, maybe the money we'd save on not building a structure to house a permanent generator.
Get two of them?
Permanently installed, yeah, get two mobile generators.
Now we just need a garage for all these generators. And an engraving gun.
And an engraving.
That's
gun.
coming.
All right. You okay with Jungfrau?
You?
Do we cover all of the engineering projects that we have been discussing?
Did you want to talk about DPW well be at all?
We asked the hydrogeologist how far they thought we would have, what distances could they give us that DPWB, the new one, would have to be from DPWA, the existing one. And he was hesitant until something happened and he said, 20 feet. I said, you know, I just need to know, are we talking 400 feet, 4,000 feet away from this, you know? He said, no, 20 feet. I said,
Yeah.
great.
Right.
Because it's being drilled as a backup well, right? So then, I mean that, because some of the stuff they were telling us was like, depending on how close it was, you could, whether you would need to do a new like wellhead protection area and calculate all, you know, bunch of hydrogeology components, or can you use what was already done for the existing well, right?
And they think a lot of it's reusable. Even they even thought they should start looking at the book the hydrogeologist did on putting the well A in
Yeah.
to get them done. They said it's still gonna take a lot of time. They were saying, it might be 2 years before we get this well in.
Really? Yeah.
That's when Muddy Beach started to rise up.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in putting a gravel packed municipal well in a brand new area, I guess is many years,
Yeah.
beyond 2, before you get something like that approved. That's why latching on to a well field that has all the problems that Muddy Beach does with the station and communication, the tanks and everything else, finding another source
Yeah.
is huge these
Yes.
days. It's not my experience in 1993 at all now, it sounds like.
Right. Yeah.
Yikes.
So, I mean, you guys are doing what you need to do to move that along, because I'm not doing anything on that
No.
necessarily.
Right.
I can't see us, you or us, putting anything into DPWB until we get Muddy Beach squared away,
Okay.
until we get the Gretchen area protected.
Yep.
I worry more about that than getting
Okay.
DPWB
Yeah,
in.
no, that's fine. That's-
And then third down the list is being able to easily bring power to Jungfrau,
Mm-hmm.
because that will happen in the next 2 years. We haven't seemed to lose three-phase power. I think the way that it runs down Route 113 and all the tree cutting that's been done over the last 10 years, I don't think we've had an interruption in three-phase power
Knock
coming
on
into the DPW building. Do you remember any?
It was very short.
Yeah, there was a,
It
yeah,
was a short outage.
the storm in, the one with the, Tony had to go get his own generator.
Right.
Yeah, but that didn't last long.
It seems that Jungfrau loses power much more often
It does.
than DPW does.
But it's still single-phase power at Jungfrau. It was that we were able to take out the phase converter because we put the VFDs in.
Right.
The VFDs act as a phase converter.
And we can put a transfer panel on Muddy Beach to run those wells, to run the booster pumps if we had to.
Yeah.
Even the wells? Yeah, even the wells, I guess.
Does that work from the inside of the building? Or would there have to be something out at the wellhead?
The power to the wellhead comes from inside that building.
Yeah.
Okay,
To answer, if that's the
Yes.
question you're asking,
Yeah.
yeah. And then a transfer panel at Rhineac, and then going up Oak Ridge Road.
yeah, and that would be the lowest priority, to bring it up. Because mostly, there's good storage at Chicorowa and good storage up at the summit, that even if it loses power for a day or two, most of that zone is still good. You know, so that would put them on the lower priority, but like you said, DPW and Jungfrau would be the first targets.
It would be the pressure system at the summit
That would,
that might want a generator before everybody else on the.
Right.
Oh, wow.
right,
Correct.
right, and that could be a little guy, you would think, a small generator, because it's just doing that
One little
small
section.
area,
Well, it's the pump.
right,
It's what that pump needs at that pressure tank.
But that is a relatively small pump compared to the other
Mhm.
ones.
yeah. Yeah, we're not talking the Jungfrau
Yeah.
pumps, it's much smaller.
Okay. Did we cover everything?
I think we
I think we
did,
did.
You'll come up with questions as soon as Nick leaves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Well-
Hours away.
but we'll come up with
Email.
more questions as we look at things,
Yeah.
Well,
if we
we're
go,
gonna walk around Bergdorf, so if you come up with one, you can call me before we actually head south again.
yeah. Oh, I might go with you.
Okay, good.
Okay.
You all set?
Yeah,
You got everything?
as much as I'm gonna get today.
So we'll adjourn to Bergdorf,
You're gonna adjourn or recess?
recess to Bergdorf
Right,
at 10:35.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paige. Sign checks before we roll out?
we should.